All right. Okay, what we have here is 2017 Cruze RS. I bought for my daughter back in November or so, and great little car. She's in college, gets super good mileage. It's got a ton of nice features in it: leather seat, heated steering wheel, stuff like that. I got a great deal on it. So anyway, super fun. It's a good car for 20-year-old kid. Anyway, she really likes her music. I mean, the kid just loves music. She loves hip hop primarily and rap. Not my jam, but she really digs it, and she spends a lot of time in the car. So anyway, I thought I would treat her, since she really appreciates good sound and things like that, to a little bit of an upgrade. Now, I will say this came with the non Bose. I think it's a Bose or a Pioneer system with subwoofers and things like that from the factory. This was just a 6-speaker stereo basic thing, but it does have navigation, Bluetooth, and other features built into the head unit. So I didn't really want to abandon that and replace it with an entirely new unit. Also, I was just trying to look at a budget sound improvement, and I'll talk a little bit about my philosophy on that, though you can disagree. I've done quite a bit of research on this, and I can say I'm getting happier and happier with the results with each upgrade I'm making. So I retained the head unit, and as many of you know, there can be some challenges with trying to add aftermarket audio equipment to these cars, as they have they're not like the old school cars. So anyway, I'm a believer in that. I think that the factory head units can deliver the frequencies required for excellent sound quality. There's just some weak parts in the system that prevent it from doing so. So I think one of the ways you can immediately improve sound quality in almost any car is by the addition of a subwoofer. There's articles and things that have been written on why that is, but you really want to round out the bottom end, but also improve the mid-range and overall music quality. A sub just does an amazing job of improving the quality. So anyway, that's where I'll start this video and talk about my subwoofer install. So let's start with the sub. Had this stuff already laying around, so I was interested in just doing a cheap upgrade. I have a Rockford Fosgate 10-inch P3. I've had the cheaper versions of this. I think they're a P1 or a P2, and I'm running this. It's a dual voice coil sub, but I am amazed at the difference when I bought this P3. The amazing difference in output and just tightness of the bass control, even running the exact same amp. So I'm really a big fan of this subwoofer, and once it got broken, I mean, I can just put as much power to this thing as I want, and there's really no issues whatsoever. My daughter has a history of blowing subwoofers, and she has not been able to do that yet with this. The box, though ugly, is correctly sized for a sealed box, and it's a nice tight bass, not as loud as a ported, but also not as big. So space is a bit of a concern here as well. So let's turn to the gear in the trunk. So what we have here is the infamous Fosgate. I'd rather pay a little extra for brand name stuff. Fosgate's been in this business for a long time. Certainly not their high-end amps, but I can tell you what, this particular amp, which is the Prime 500, certainly can deliver for your non-audiophile applications. It feeds this sub great, probably more power even than it needs. But I've had really good luck with this. I've got several of these in other cars, and I'm pretty happy with that. So anyway, I bought this sub. What's nice about this is it has line level inputs, which means that you can, and what I did was just tapped off the rear door speakers for the signal, and the amp can auto detect, and you don't need a remote turn on because it has a sensing switch inside of that. So just a nice feature. It also has some nice adjustments on gain controls and things like that. But basically, the way I like to set these things up is I like to set the gains properly, and there's better videos than I can develop on how to properly set the gains on your sub, even if you're just doing it by ear without electronic equipment. Anyway, the way I've hooked this thing up is I mounted it on I built a board that you can see right back here. Attached that to the sheet metal in the trunk, and then I mounted the amp to the board with screws, super solid, no vibrations, and I'm really happy with the way that turns out. Looks pretty good. Follow the power cord, the fuse. Obviously, you need a fuse, and then I run that right down to the battery, which is in the trunk. That's really nice to be able to pick up that terminal there for the power. And I'm probably running the fuse a little bit far away from the battery than they recommend, but it's more ease of access in case it ever blows. As important as the power supply is, you need a really good ground, and I have it grounded out behind the amp there to the chassis. So we've got good strong connections, and I just like to do a neat install. So anyway, I told you that I had it hooked up to the speaker, but as you can see, I'm not using that. I wasn't really happy with the bass and what it could be after I hooked it up, because these radios have that crazy function, and as most OEM radios do, is that the louder you turn the radio up, it starts to trim the bass back, and then it kind of defeats the whole purpose of doing this setup. So what's the answer to that? Well, one of these guys. There's different sorts of audio controls that do bass correction. These guys, super great quality stuff, good support, and I'll tell you, this really improved the bass at higher volumes, and it adjusts for increases in volume, so you really don't notice any of the changes in volume from the head unit. So that's how you solve that problem. And you can see they have these nice little speed wiring things, and I like to do a neat job, so I put proper connectors, and then I shrink wrap or heat shrink all the connections just so I can have a little more professional looking install. Part of this is just the fun of putting it all together, but anybody can do this on their own. And I just think doing good quality work is you do it once and you don't have to do it again. So anyway, that's the setup. Again, not super boomy bass, not super loud bass, but really nice, tightly controlled bass that even for hip hop and sounds really good. Erin might want it louder, but if she wants to start spending her money doing it, then she can do that. Okay. Anyway, the other thing I should notice, there's like a finishing panel over here that once I reinstall all this stuff, the trunk, all this is invisible, and it looks super clean, super factory, except for the wire protruding through the side of it into the sub. Okay. All right, let's move into the car. So after I did all the sub work and that sort of fun stuff, I went to listen to it and still wasn't super happy with the sound quality. So I decided to upgrade the speakers, because really what was causing the problem with the sound is the speakers just weren't capable of delivering the frequencies that you want to hear that really makes good sound quality. So what I did was, for Christmas, is I gave her a set of component speakers, which I installed over Christmas. Component speakers, 6.5 woofer, mid bass in the door with a tweeter mounted remotely. I abandoned the corner speakers underneath the windshield because they were 3.5 inch and just really not that good of a speaker. Plus, for issues of sound quality, you don't want your highs that far separated from your the rest of your speakers, because then you start having issues with time alignment. And if you don't know what time alignment is, there's better videos than I can produce on why time alignment is critical to really good sound. This tweeter placement is probably a little bit too far away from the, I don't know if I'm 100% happy with it, though it sounds really good. I think there is some music where I think the time alignment issues are catching up to me, but I'm not willing to invest to make that correction. We'll call this good enough, though this thing still sounds fantastic. Okay, so let me show you what I did in the door here. Okay, so what we have here is I totally covered the entire interior of the door panel with a sound deadening material. Highly recommended. You really want to isolate the road noise as well as any transient frequencies built up by the back of the woofer rattling around inside the door. So that takes some time to do, and time to do well. You want to cut out all the holes for the various mounting parts of the panel so that fits nice and tight in factory when it's all said and done. And I'll tell you what, this makes an amazing difference in the overall level of sound inside the car when you're driving it. It really is amazing. This is just a cheap stuff. There's a few tricks that you can do to get this stuff a lot cheaper, because if you buy Dynamat or any of that equivalent, you can spend big money. And this what I'll call the cheap hack, which you can look up online and in other videos, I think is what I would consider good enough. Certainly not worth the additional benefit you get from the brand name stuff. Just doesn't quite get there for me. This car is very quiet inside now, and that does a lot to improve not only volume but sound quality as well. So what I did here, I bought on Crutchfield, I bought some JBL speakers. Crutchfield, I buy from them as opposed to Amazon because these guys are great at customer support and service. I bought the audio control, bass correction, the amp, all that stuff from Crutchfield. If you wait for sales and things like that, you can get just as good of pricing as you can on Amazon. You just got to watch and wait. And the service is just absolutely phenomenal. And if you buy enough stuff, audio equipment, you're going to have something where you're running into issues at some point, and you just want to be able to call a friend, and Crutchfield, I think, does a really good job of that. Okay, so back to the speakers. JBL component speakers, rated for 70 watts RMS. I don't know what the peak is. That number doesn't matter so much, but I bought something that could at least handle some power, at least in the future if I ever wanted to upgrade that. I also bought these special adapter, mounting adapters, which are for GM vehicles. You'll want to do that. This makes the install so much better. And then when I initially installed these, I didn't have any of the sound deadening material, and I just had these brackets in the speakers mounted to that. And the problem with that is that the speaker was sitting too far back and away from the inside of the speaker grill. So there was probably, I would say maybe about an inch or two gap, and I felt like I was losing sound back into the door, and I wasn't really happy with that. So I decided to take the doors back off and then do this correctly, and that's when I did all the sound deadening, and I'm really glad that I did. It didn't take that much time, maybe about an hour per door. The other thing that I did is I bought some of these spacers. That's a 1/2 inch spacer, and then I also bought some speaker baffles, which is just a cup that the speaker sits in, protects it from moisture and humidity changes and things like that, but it also helps contain the sound from behind the speaker from going into the door and bouncing around. It just improves some mid-bass performance, and I'm pretty happy with the way it sounds. Then I also bought some foam, and I wrapped the outside of the cone with this foam, and I can tell by some of the marks, I don't know if you can see that it's just contacting this piece of the door down there, so I got the spacing just right. Also have these crossovers, not super high quality, but they seem to do okay. They also have a button on them where you can improve, or you can enhance the tweeter response by 3 dB. I'll tell you what, I had them pressed to improve the decibel, I guess that's decibel levels or whatever they call that, but anyway, it was way too much, so I'm just running them flat, and that has more than sufficient high frequency output. Nice and clear and nice and tight. So anyway, that's where I'm at today. Now, while I'm super happy with the sound quality of this as I'm cruising down the road, the thing that I'm not really happy about is just the volume level. So there's a stock radio right there. When I crank the volume, once you get close to about 90% total volume, you get all the distortion, and it's not really, I don't know, it's not super loud. It's very clear, but not super loud. So I'm in the process now of adding a amplifier to the door speakers. So what I did, and you can see, this is the factory radio. It's just a single DIN unit with a screen, nothing fancy, but clearly a lot of technology and functionality in it. So what I did is I bought a small mini amp, a Pioneer mini amp, and I am planning to install it somewhere here in the dash. I'm hoping I can find a spot for it. It's quite small. It's only about 7.5 inches by 2.5 by 1.5, and I'm hoping to stuff it in here someplace, and that's why I have this dash all apart. I just ordered it. It's not here yet, but I've isolated the front speaker wires. That amp, it runs at 4 ohms, runs 45 watts per channel into 4 channels. You can also bridge it to 90 watts into RMS into 2 channels, and